Now available in paperback and coming to Kindle Unlimited. John Haynes, Dark Succubus. The man who rules the world is tempted by a sultry succubus in this all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get John Haynes, Dark Succubus in paperback or pre-order on Kindle Unlimited today. One of my viewers asked me to take a look at the trailer for X-Men Dark Phoenix. And after taking a look at the trailer for X-Men Dark Phoenix, I can say that this is going to be one of the worst superhero films in the history of the superhero film genre. Now, Dark Phoenix and the Phoenix Saga is one of the greatest stories of the comic book medium. And what I saw presented in this cinematic adaptation of X-Men Dark Phoenix does not do the comic books it's based on justice. Now, when I think of the Phoenix Saga, I think of an epic storyline, and there's nothing epic about what was presented in this film trailer for X-Men Dark Phoenix. The trailers give us a film that feels like it's something on a small scale. It does not feel large and epic the way the Phoenix Saga was presented in those Marvel comics by the legendary writer Chris Claremont and the legendary pencilers Dave Cockrum and John Byrne. When you look at those comics, you see something that is just incredible in the, I believe, 40 or 45 issues which compose the Phoenix Saga, because the Phoenix Saga starts, I believe, with X-Men 9. It really starts with X-Men, I say, about 97 or 98, and it goes all the way to issue number 138. So we're talking about at least about 40 or 50 issues of comic books, and that is something that you really want to have a really epic film. And again, the scale that I see presented on the screen is extremely small as related to this adaptation, and with a small scale, we don't get to see any of the heart or the soul of the original Phoenix Saga presented. Now, what really makes this Dark Phoenix movie really fall apart is the glaring omission of several characters that were a part of the X-Men at the time. Now, back in the 70s, the X-Men were comprised of Nightcrawler, Colossus, Wolverine, Cyclops, Storm, and Banshee was there for a little while. And this core 5 team was integral to the Phoenix Saga. And several of the characters that were integral to the Phoenix Saga, Wolverine is not there, and he had a major relationship with Jean Grey, and it was a major part of the story. Colossus is not there, and that really hurts the story as related to Dark Phoenix. And what also hurts the Phoenix story is that there is no understanding of the relationships between Jean Grey and the X-Men as a family unit, and understanding the incredible power of the Phoenix. The Phoenix was an extremely powerful entity. It was almost godlike, and what was really the crux of the Phoenix story was something which I got inspired for with the Isis character, was that Jean Grey, this human being, had the power of a god. And with this power of a god, you had this human being who was very limited in her in things as related to her thinking and her understanding of power. And this was something that was really explored by Chris Claremont and John Byrne in their X-Men stories. You have this human being with this godlike power, and it was an exploration of how human nature is as related to having this godlike power. And what this story was all about was how this person who was inherently trying to be good could be corrupted by that power. And that's what the Dark Phoenix was all about. It was about the good Jean Grey eventually winding up giving into all of the dark desires that were fostered by Jason Wingard, the mastermind. And because he was manipulating Jean Grey, she gave into her darker and baser natures, and then eventually became this Dark Phoenix who gave into the full scope of her power, because as the good Jean Grey, she was using her powers positively, but she was not giving into it to try to use it completely and try to use it to harm people. But when it came down to it, the Dark Phoenix, it destroyed an entire galaxy. And that's something I don't see presented on screen in this movie as related to the incredible power of the Phoenix, because the Phoenix destroyed an entire galaxy and then returned to Earth and was looking to destroy even more. And everybody understanding the threat of the Dark Phoenix was terrified of the power that Jean Grey had, and what they were really terrified was that you had this human being with this limited mind and this limited scope, and they were becoming overwhelmed not only by their powers, but they were becoming overwhelmed by their feelings regarding those powers, because Jean Grey was starting to feel some sense of joy and satisfaction as using those powers, and she was enjoying using those powers for destructive purposes. And that's why the X-Men were trying to go out here to stop her, because they didn't want to see others harmed by someone. But what really conflicted them was that this was their friend, and they were still trying to reach out to her and the parts of her humanity that remained in this transformation into godhood. So all of that is really lost in this very shallow adaptation of X-Men Dark Phoenix and the Phoenix Saga. And what I see in its place of all of that richness, depth, and layers is that being replaced by some little alien female, and they're supposed to be like a representation of Emma Frost and Mastermind, but it's really a shallow presentation of what was there, because all of the things that led to Jean Grey becoming the Dark Phoenix, these things were laid out intricately by Chris Claremont and John Byrne and Dave Cockrum over the course of several years. And your film, Dark Phoenix, tries to condense all of that. And in its attempts to condense all of that into one film, they do an incredibly poor job as related to what I saw in the trailer. Because what was in the trailer really did not capture what was in the comics. And what was in the trailer really was shallow, flat, and one-dimensional, and really did not really take you into what was really compelling about the Phoenix Saga. Because when I look at what they presented in Dark Phoenix, I saw a very bland, uninspired film that really did not it showed that the screenwriter and the director really did not understand the magnitude of the source material, nor did they understand the incredible concepts that were being presented here as related to this Dark Phoenix. What they wanted to do was make a Dark Phoenix movie in the hopes of being able to capitalize on all of those X-Men fans, and this film is an incredible disappointment for any X-Men fan out there. As someone who actually owned the original Phoenix Saga issues, I understood how much there was to this story, and I understand that that wasn't really presented there. We got all of these replacement characters, and we really don't get the substance of the story in what was presented in that trailer and the adaptation of this film. And many are calling this the worst superhero film of all time, and I'd have to agree with them that this is the worst superhero film of all time based on what I saw in those visuals, because those visuals that are presented are very generic looking, very bland looking, and they don't really fit what the Phoenix Saga should have. When it comes down to what John Byrne depicted in his comics, I want those big, grand visuals, because when you look at John Byrne's art, it's very big and very powerful, and we don't get any of that conveyed in these visuals. And when it comes down to the special effects, they are just so generic and standard, it's not even funny. I mean, everything in Dark Phoenix feels like it was cut and pasted from a dozen other films. And this is an issue I've had with not only Dark Phoenix, but with Avengers Endgame, Infinity War, Black Panther. All of these films, they just feel, look, and sound the same, and they don't give me anything unique, special, or distinct about it. It's just computer-generated images that have no heart, no soul, no energy, and it just doesn't really grab you. It's supposed to they're trying to show you this story, but then everything that's meant to add to the story takes away from it because it's just so average looking. And when I look at Dark Phoenix, I see nothing special about this film to denote how grand a story it was in the comics, and I see nothing there that really gives you that sense of awe and wonder that was in the Phoenix Saga and really gives you that look into those comics. Because when you read the original Phoenix Saga, I say from 98 to 138, you are going to be in for one of the biggest, most epic comic series of comics ever, and we don't get that in this Dark Phoenix movie. Instead, we get a film that is far below what the standard would be for the Phoenix Saga, and it's a major disappointment because when it comes down to the X-Men, they deserve better than what was presented in that trailer, and we deserve a better X-Men movie than what was presented in those trailers. A lot of people are getting upset about the dialogue being cringy, and a lot of people are getting upset about the term X-Women, and that really has no place in the X-Men lore, because the X-Men lore was not about identity politics. It was about two sides. It was about Charles Xavier believing that mutants could exist with humans, and Eric Lensher, or Magneto, believing that mutants were superior and that they should live away from humanity. And though that's what the X-Men was about, and it's not about assuming genders or identity politics. They were called X-Men because they had something extra, and that name is iconic for multiple generations, and seeing them talk about X-Women, that was quite troubling. Now, the other thing that led to this film being the disaster that it is was your Academy Award winner of the Hunger Games. I'm going to try to remember her name. That's how bad my memory is as related to her. And she was the one who made this mess of a film. Jennifer Lawrence, that's her name. Now, your Jennifer Lawrence, she is the main reason why Dark Phoenix is absolutely so terrible, because this Oscar-winning female thought that because she was playing Mystique, that she had this Oscar from the Hunger Games or whatever film she got it from, she could have pull and clout, and because she had this pull and clout, she decided not to go and just support the studio in getting a good director like a James Cameron or a Peter Jackson who could go out here and give us an epic film. No, she wanted the screenwriter of the film to be the director, a man who had no experience in making actual films, and that was something that if I was running Fox Studios, I would have to just overrule your Jennifer Lawrence and let her know that, look, this film is too important for us to put some screenwriter who has never made a film in charge of it. We need to have a seasoned professional who has a vision for this type of film, because the material is too epic and too grand for us to put it in the hands of an amateur. And because you're Jennifer Lawrence, who is full of herself as much as Katherine Heigl was back in the day, insisted that this inexperienced director be put in charge of this Dark Phoenix movie. This is why the visuals are so small. This is why the special effects are so ineffective. And this is why we get so many generic shots instead of efforts to give us high-risk shots that would really show us how epic the visuals are. Moreover, there should have been efforts to include those core characters like Colossus and Wolverine because they had a major relationship with Jean Grey in the comics, and all of that was never really explored effectively the way it was in the comics. So when I look at the X-Men Dark Phoenix movie, it was a disaster from the start, and your Jennifer Lawrence was a major component of that. The other one was Fox Studios not understanding how epic this story was and not understanding how important this story is to Marvel fans and especially fans of the X-Men, because the Dark Phoenix Saga and the Phoenix Saga, they were cornerstones of the X-Men universe, part of the Marvel universe, and a cornerstone of comics history. And it's a shame that this story will not be done justice on screen, and this is the reason why I believe this is going to be one of the worst superhero movies of the entire genre. And it's a shame, again, that this film is coming out, because this film, it should have been shelved the way the original Fox Studios intended to shelve it, because they knew that this film just didn't meet the standard of what it meant to the Phoenix Saga. It didn't meet the standard that Marvel fans were expecting, and it's a major disappointment as a film, as a superhero film, and it's even a more of a disappointment for all of us X-Men fans who know how great, grand, and epic that the X-Men characters are, the X-Men series is, and it's a major disappointment. And as I see it, it's all the fault of your Jennifer Lawrence. It's her fault that we have this terrible movie representing Dark Phoenix, and I hope maybe, possibly, if Marvel Studios can get its head out of its backside, we may get something better in the future. If you'd like to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon or my PayPal by clicking the link in the description box. And if you want to try some of my SJS Direct fantasy books like the Isis series, the E-Steam series, the John Haynes series, and the Spinsterella trilogy, you may do so by clicking the link to Amazon.com in the description box to pick up my books in paperback or ebook formats. Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, E-Steam Goddess of. Hell's aspiring angel takes on a demonic dominatrix in this action-packed all-new E-Steam series adventure. Get E-Steam Goddess of in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today.